With the White House working overtime to level the playing field on trade and says their tariff strategy is getting countries to the negotiating table, and one of those is Japan.
The government has asked its carriers to stop taking delivery of Boeing aircraft in the meantime, and this extends to aircraft-related equipment and parts from U.S. companies.
Today, as investors await the next salvo in President Trump's tariff and trade wars.
The American economy is currently navigating one of its most volatile phases in recent history. So turbulent, in fact, that many observers consider this moment a breaking point. Major retailers across the U.S. are scaling back large-scale purchases from China, while ports in Asia are starting to overflow with idle containers, revealing the mounting stress on the global supply chain. This leads us to a pressing question. What exactly is going on? As trade tensions between Washington and Beijing flare up once again, are we watching the gradual breakdown of global logistics under the weight of new tariffs and surging transport costs? Before we unpack it all, make sure you're subscribed, hit the notification bell, and give us a like. Now, diving into the roots of this growing disruption, U.S. news outlets report a sharp increase in canceled orders to Chinese vendors, especially from major e-commerce giants and bulk distributors. The decrease in Chinese imports is no longer subtle. It's become very noticeable. Analysts warn that this wave of cancellations could severely destabilize shipping networks. At Chinese docks, stacks of containers are sitting untouched, and many are being withdrawn before they can even be loaded. Shipping operators are beginning to feel the ripple effects as demand softens. So what's really behind this dramatic pullback? Is it just the new tariffs, or is there a deeper shift unfolding? According to internal leaks, recently announced duties, likely to stick around for the foreseeable future, have sent import expenses to unprecedented heights. The U.S. government's push to raise taxes on high-priority goods like tech components and military-grade materials is triggering alarm among companies reliant on Chinese production. The impact reaches across multiple industries, from electronics and medicine to everyday household items. And with inflation still squeezing American consumers, domestic profit margins are getting tighter as global prices soar. Put plainly, big corporations are looking for ways to avoid either raising prices on customers or selling products at a loss. Their solution? Cut spending elsewhere. Meanwhile, manufacturers in China are taking a harder stance. Viral posts online show many factories standing firm on pricing. As U.S. buyers try to renegotiate deals or push for bonuses, Asian suppliers are holding their ground. Reports suggest many producers are already suffering from shrinking export volumes. As a result, their focus has shifted to safeguarding profits rather than handing out discounts. Rising operational costs and wage increases are long-standing complaints, but now they're reaching a boiling point. Economic experts in the U.S. warn this standoff could intensify and cause damage on both ends. The backlog of containers is just the early sign of what might evolve into a full-scale supply gridlock. Online chatter suggests smaller vendors are informing U.S. customers about upcoming price increases tied to import taxes. Others are leaving the U.S. marketplace altogether. What happens next? Fewer choices, fewer sellers, and more dominance by a handful of big names. With less competition, prices creep higher, and consumers get stuck paying more for less. Amazon's variety could shrink, along with its pricing advantage. On the other side, Chinese producers are scrambling to cope. Rumors point to some companies attempting to avoid tariffs by underdeclaring goods at customs. If authorities catch wind of this, the consequences could be serious. Fines, trade restrictions, and damaged reputations. But for suppliers on the brink, bending the rules may feel like the only lifeline. Meanwhile, American regulators are stepping up their inspections, imposing tougher scrutiny to crack down on customs fraud. If enforcement tightens, it could worsen diplomatic strains between Washington and Beijing. The White House recently reaffirmed its goal to rebuild U.S. manufacturing. For decades, firms prioritized foreign production to cut costs. Now, officials are calling for a shift in how supply chains are designed. But change won't come fast. It's a marathon, not a sprint. This shift will touch nearly every sector: autos, textiles, electronics, pharmaceuticals, you name it. All of them lean heavily on parts and materials from China. And if new tariffs land on items like semiconductors or drug ingredients, tensions could rise even higher. American firms are feeling squeezed. On one hand, they're facing steep import and freight costs. On the other, inflation continues to hurt consumer spending, still fragile from the pandemic. If businesses pass those costs to customers, they risk losing sales. But if they eat the costs themselves, profits vanish. It's a no-win scenario. That's why many are opting to halt purchases altogether, at least for now. The logic seems to be: stop, wait, observe how the new taxes play out, and make decisions later. Several large American retailers have already started distancing themselves from Chinese vendors, exploring sourcing alternatives. Some company insiders admit they've begun shifting operations to Southeast Asia in hopes of dodging the tariff blow. In essence, if China becomes too expensive to import from, businesses will look for cheaper regions. This pivot has ignited a broader conversation. Are we seeing a fundamental transformation in trade? Or is this just a momentary disturbance? Some argue that the global realignment underway is permanent. Others believe the crisis is temporary, but many international analysts are warning that the situation may stretch on indefinitely. Higher tariffs and protectionist trade rules could become the new global standard. The resurgence of economic nationalism, rooted in policies from the Trump era, is meant to revive American industry. But turning that vision into reality means retailers and online sellers must commit to purchasing goods made in the U.S., even if they're more expensive. And that's a tall order. China still leads global production with a scale few nations can rival. From consumer electronics to fashion, its factories churn out millions of units at unbeatable prices. But tariffs undercut that advantage. And as price hikes distort competition, the entire system begins to shift. Some firms are already scouting new markets with cheaper labor, while shipping providers face growing uncertainty and mass order cancellations. Empty container surpluses are driving down freight rates. Some port authorities are now even posting financial losses. For everyday consumers, the fallout could be steep. We may see unstable pricing on tech, clothing, and home essentials. If retailers abandon Chinese imports and turn to costlier suppliers, that added expense will likely trickle down to shoppers. And when prices rise, purchasing slows. Lower demand then feeds right back into the supply chain, compounding the problem. This domino effect is already catching up with giants like Amazon. In recent years, a huge slice of its inventory came from Chinese vendors offering budget-friendly items that boosted platform revenue. Now, with new tariffs in place, those sellers are rethinking their future. From China's perspective, all eyes are on the growing stockpiles. Online footage shows container terminals packed with unsold goods. Many are still filled with canceled inventory, now sitting in limbo. If this trend drags on, China could suffer a major blow to its export income. That would be devastating for an economy built around international trade. And naturally, the ripple wouldn't stop there. Europe, Asia, and developing nations tied into the system could all be affected. This crisis isn't confined to online retail. The pain is spreading across manufacturing sectors, especially tech and auto. Semiconductor companies, which produce the chips that power everything from phones to vehicles, are holding off on deals, awaiting policy clarity. Already, contract delays and renegotiations are spreading. If additional tariffs hit advanced tech components, devices like laptops and smartphones could jump in price. Some forecasters expect consumers to delay upgrades, leading to a major slowdown in tech consumption. That could hit the entire sector hard. Despite all this, both nations still hold key advantages. China commands vast export power, while the U.S. controls one of the most lucrative consumer markets on the planet. Both sides are keeping close watch, waiting for each other's next move. Experts warn that if this conflict continues, mass cancellations and clogged ports could become the norm. This may only be the beginning. As tariffs expand, similar trouble spots could surface elsewhere. So how long will this last? No one has a clear answer. Some hope for negotiations and compromise. Others think the standoff may stretch on for years. The main uncertainty is whether the U.S. can truly bring back large-scale production. Doing so would require heavy investment, years of planning, and a total rework of the labor market. Competing with low-wage economies won't be easy. If all goes right, perhaps in 5 to 10 years, the shift could materialize. But in the near term, it's the consumer who pays the price. And if China begins losing significant global business, its export-heavy model could falter. We're heading into a period full of unknowns. But one thing is crystal clear. The overflow of containers at Asian docks is a sign that something vital in world trade is beginning to crack. If this bottleneck isn't cleared and cancellations keep rising, global commerce could shrink sharply. Are we looking at the start of a worldwide economic downturn? That's the question many are asking. And just when the world seemed to be recovering from the pandemic, it now faces another blow. This time from trade. The road to recovery just got more complicated. Financial institutions and central banks are closely monitoring this chessboard, watching every move. Another key question: how will retail powerhouses like Amazon and Walmart navigate this? They're expected to branch out, find new sourcing regions, and restructure supply chains. But that takes time. Existing deals, routes, and capacity don't shift overnight. Reports suggest both are accelerating investments in other Asian nations. Still, those regions come with their own risks: unstable politics, weak infrastructure, or limited factory scale. In reality, pulling out of China is far more complex than it sounds. Plus, companies don't just manufacture there, they sell there too. The Chinese market is too valuable to ignore. It's not only about where goods are made, but where they end up. What we're watching is a multi-layered global strategy game. Each move carries weight in both political and economic terms. In April, the White House admitted that these trade battles won't end soon, but promised a long-term plan to revitalize American industry. Chinese officials echoed that sentiment, reaffirming their commitment to strengthen domestic demand while expanding into new export markets. All signs suggest this standoff between two global giants isn't going away anytime soon. The final question remains: which side can endure the longest? Trade disputes often sound abstract until you see real-world consequences like containers stuck at sea, unsold goods piling up, and prices rising at home. There's no win here, just mutual damage. What's your take? As American companies pull back and new tariffs loom, can they really rebuild supply lines from scratch? Will Chinese factories stay firm even as products sit unsold? Are we heading into a long, drawn-out trade showdown? Or will cooler heads prevail? Let us know in the comments. And if you want to stay ahead of this unfolding story, don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, and join us in our next update. Because one thing is for sure: the era of smooth, predictable international trade is over.